So thank you, Josh, for that introduction. I am always super excited to talk about rabbits. And just a little bit about me and my background. I grew up showing rabbits as a youth in the Utah 4-H program. I raised Holland Lops, so I have a passion for those small hobby breeds. And then more recently, we have started, by we, I mean my husband and I, Jake, is also part of Utah State University Extension. We have started raising meat rabbits for both human and animal consumption. So have been, getting back into the rabbit scene and have really enjoyed doing all this education pieces and things like that. So with that, we are going to go ahead and just jump right into all of this rabbit stuff. So I wanted to go over some basics first, and hopefully this is, for those of you who are in this session, hopefully you know some of this, but this is one of my favorite quotes. Rhea Freeman, she's an equestrian business coach. Learn the basics and then start doing. It's the very best way to learn and grow. And I think sometimes we skip right over those basics and we have some holes in our knowledge. So just some really basic information to get us started. Rabbits have 3 common uses in the United States: meat and fur, which hopefully if you're part of the Backyard Home Expo or you're an urban homesteader, that's what you are the most interested in for our rabbits. We have hobby and companionship. And the reason we separate hobby and companionship is hobby rabbits would be what I did growing up as a youth. I raised rabbits to show and for exhibition. And then companionship would be like your pet rabbits that are in the house, or maybe you have a pet rabbit in the backyard, but their purpose is to be a pet. Some more common terms and phrases. A buck is a male rabbit, a doe is a female, and a kit or a kitten is what baby rabbits are technically called. You will find everything ranging from a bunny rabbit is the technical term for a baby rabbit to just a baby rabbit. But kit is when you are in a rabbit community or you're working in the industry, a kit or a kitten is that term that you're going to hear. 2 other breeding terms or definitions that we need to talk about is gestation. So your gestation is going to be the time from breeding to birth. For rabbits, that's approximately 30 days, anywhere from 28 to 34. Some larger rabbits are even going to go to day 35, 36. Rabbits are also induced ovulators, meaning that they have a very special cycle where they have induced ovulation. So what that means is that when rabbits are in the presence of a male, so the pheromones as well as being in with a male, so the act of breeding is going to induce ovulation. So rabbits do not have a cycle the way our other livestock species are. So they can basically breed at any time. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to have a high conception rate, because our males are going to have lower productivity in the winter when they have reduced light, and in the summer when it's really hot. So even though our rabbits technically can ovulate at any time, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be able to have viable embryos. Some more breeding terms that we need to just discuss, and this is going to become really important when you guys are looking for breeding stock. Maybe you already have your rabbits, maybe you're looking for rabbits, but one thing to really be aware of is the difference between purebred, pedigreed, and registered rabbits. Purebred rabbits have a known lineage of the same breed with 4 more generations. You can have a purebred Rex. That means that as far back as you can see, or as far as you know, that rabbit is Rex. Pedigreed rabbits, typically also purebred rabbits, have a full pedigree of at least 4 generations. Pedigrees are just lineage. That is going to be as much as the weight, the date of birth, the show records of the parents from both sides. Typically, if you are keeping pedigrees on your rabbits, it's because you have purebred rabbits and you need to be keeping those kinds of records. However, we have, and I'll talk about composites here in just a little bit. We have composites, which is just a mixed breed. We keep pedigrees on those as well because we're keeping those records. They're pedigreed rabbits, but they aren't purebred. that is something really important. When you're buying pedigreed rabbits, make sure you clarify if you have purebred rabbits or just mixed breed rabbits with lineage. And then finally, registered rabbits. Unlike most other species, rabbits cannot be registered just because of purebred status. Rabbits have to meet a certain level of requirements. They have to win a certain amount of shows. They have to have a certain level of standard. They have to meet that standard of perfection. And then they have to be evaluated by a certified judge and registrar to be registered. So if you are able to get your hands on some registered rabbits, those are rabbits that are basically guaranteed to be high quality. All registered rabbits will be purebred and pedigreed, but not all purebred and pedigreed rabbits will be registered. So this is a question that we get a lot when people are starting to look for their rabbits, is the difference between these three terms. And especially when you see rabbits listed on, social media or maybe at your local feed store, you're going to see these terms, and it's important to know what they mean. Okay, so obviously we know what purebred rabbits are, but we also have composites and meat mutts. Our composites, such as the Tamuk, so the Tamuk is a special line of rabbits that was developed through Texas A&M University, Kingsville. They were strategically mixed from purebred rabbits for specific purposes and traits. They're heat tolerant. They have large litters, they grow fast, and they're heat tolerant. We call them composites because they were developed from breeds already, and they're consistent in their traits and their reproduction. Then you have meat mutts, which is basically just any combination of breeds. If you don't know the lineage, you probably have a meat mutt. Basically, composites are also considered meat mutts. It's just a nicer way to say that. So, all right. That also is going to take us right into selection. And like I said earlier, you may already have your rabbit and your breeding stock, but that doesn't mean that you can't always be looking to improve, or maybe you are trying to pair rabbits a certain way. My favorite thing when it comes to raising rabbits is that it costs the same to feed a good rabbit as it does to feed a bad one. And in some cases, it's going to cost you more to feed the bad ones because they haven't been bred and selected for the traits that are going to make them really efficient on their feed. So when we're selecting rabbits, I'm going to go through this really quickly because hopefully this is just background for everyone. On the left, you have a 4-pound Holland Lop, and on the right, you have a 10-pound New Zealand. Now, obviously, if you are raising meat rabbits, you're going to gravitate towards a larger, more compact rabbit type, such as the New Zealand. And you may even be thinking that bigger is better. However, so this is another large rabbit breed. This is a checkered giant. They are at minimum 12 pounds. And you can see the difference in how these two rabbits are built. The checkered giant is a full arch breed, meaning that you can see, his body type is an arch, compared to the commercial breed type of the New Zealand. Now, this diagram that I'm going to show you guys is from Raggedy Bits Rabbitry, John and Janet Ford. They raised two rabbits to really show the difference in your rabbit type. Bigger is not always better. So the checkered giant, which was the rabbit on the left, versus the New Zealand white. These are two full-grown rabbits. They are both 6 months. They were both purebred and pedigreed. They were healthy. They were on the same feed. And you can see the drastic difference between the carcass type and quality of the checkered giant versus the New Zealand white. Now, the really interesting thing is that the checkered giant carcass actually is pretty similar in weight to the New Zealand white carcass, but you can see the New Zealand white carcass is going to have a lot more product on it. So when you are selecting for rabbits, that breed type, that visual inspection is going to be really important before you start breeding. When you are looking at breeds, and again, I'm going to go through this really quickly, and then if you have questions, please drop those in the chat, but there are over 50 recognized breeds in the American Rabbit Breeders Association. There are over 15 in the commercial type, and nationwide, the top 4 meat breeds are the California, the New Zealand, Palomino, and Satins. This is a California. They're known for that Himalayan or that pointed white coloring. The New Zealand, which we saw earlier, New Zealands are really popular and they come in a lot of different colors and varieties, so they're kind of fun. The Palomino, which is known for their golden coat, they're a little bit smaller than your New Zealand breed, so they're a good choice for youth exhibitors or maybe people that don't need to be producing a ton of meat product, but still want that efficiency. And then the satin. So satins is what we breed. They have a unique fur type. You can see in this picture, they're really shiny. It's because they have a transparent hair shaft, so it catches the light differently. And then, of course, in Utah, you guys probably have heard of Rex, Silver Fox, and then just mixed breeds. So we have a lot of Rex in Utah. And remember, like those 4 breeds are nationwide. Those are the most popular nationwide. In Utah specifically, you're going to see a lot of Rex, a lot of Silver Fox, and a lot of just mixed breed rabbits. When you are evaluating rabbits, here's another just diagram that I wanted to show you guys. On the left is bad phenotype, on the right is good. So from this rear view, you can see how peaked that rabbit is compared to on the right, we have a rabbit that's very round and full. We want to make sure that they are really full in the loin. So instead of caving in the way on that second row, that rabbit caves in on its loin compared to on the right, the good example, that rabbit is really round. We want them to have a really high peak. So that third row, the rabbit on the left is really low and flat. The rabbit on the right has that high peak. And then we want to look at their shoulders. That bottom row shows a rabbit that's really long in the front end. And so that is just wasted product. We don't eat the shoulders on rabbits. And so we want a small shoulder and we want a really long rack and loin. So basic just selection. Whether you have rabbits or not, it's really important that we are constantly selecting for better and better rabbits. And if you already have your rabbits, you can use this as a guide to select replacements and also to bring in new stock as you are continuing down the breeding journey. Okay, so let's talk about breeding rabbits. Despite their reputation, we hear this all the time, breed like rabbits or rabbits are like potato chips. You can't have just one. It's really not always as simple as just breeding like rabbits. There is some technical things that we need to do. And of course, we always have those litters that are accidental. It seems like the more technical we are, or the more important a litter is to us, the harder it is to get them bred. So I'm going to go through basically from start to finish what we're going to do when we're breeding rabbits. The first thing I just wanted to touch on really quick, and I don't have a slide specifically for this, but we want to make sure that our rabbits are healthy, that we have done a breeding soundness exam for our rabbits, and that they have no signs of disease. We want to make sure they're in good condition, that their fur and their coat is in good condition. We want to clip their nails, check their teeth, look for anything that may hinder their reproduction abilities, and also anything that may be passed on to their offspring that is not desirable. Some examples of that would be rabbits that are prone to ear mites. If you have a rabbit that just consistently gets ear mites, maybe one that we don't want to breed. If you have a rabbit that gets sore hocks from being on a wire cage, that's a rabbit that we don't want to breed. Rabbits that have bad teeth, rabbits that have undescended testicles, things like that. Those are all examples of things that you're going to look for during that breeding soundness exam. On day 1, you are going to bring the doe to the buck. Does are very territorial and they can seriously injure a buck if they feel threatened. They also will do what we call clamp down, meaning that they will just lay flat on the bottom and they will not let the buck breed. They're not very receptive. So we bring the female to the buck. We either take them to the buck's enclosure or we're going to go to a neutral space. Some people do table breeding, meaning that they just have a square of carpet and they are going to be right there, very hands-on, making sure that the rabbits breed and that they are not, basically they want to make sure that neither the doe or the buck gets injured. So once you have your rabbits together, you're going to look for 2 or 3 fall-offs. This, if you've never seen this before, is very aggressive. So it can be really shocking. I highly recommend if you have the opportunity to watch somebody that is experienced with rabbits breed, so that you can identify that fall off. There is no mistaking it. You absolutely will know what a fall off is. Basically, that is going to be the act of breeding. That's when the buck is able to ejaculate, and that is when the doe is bred. So you're going to look for two or three of those. We've developed our own scale, and we actually like rate our rabbits on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being they are not receptive to breeding at all. The doe is running. We're not sure we ever get a fall off. We're worried about the buck being hurt. That would be a 1. And then all the way up to a 5, which is basically the doe goes into the buck's cage. She lays down, she lifts. We get 2 or 3 fall offs right in a row, and then they cuddle. And so you can see this picture here. This is one of our does. Her name is Dream, and one of our herd sires. His name is Levi. And we always got a 5 out of this pairing. For whatever reason, we were always very successful, and they would always sit right next to each other. Levi would groom Dream a little bit. So that would be a level 5 versus for whatever reason, does can be kind of picky. And so if you have a hard time getting your does to breed, sometimes you just need to pick a new buck. We have another doe named AJ that does not like Levi, and we would get a 0 to a 1. No matter how hard Levi tried, we just did not get a good pairing. And the reason we keep records of that scale of 1 to 5 is that it helps us with our future pairings, but it's also helping us recognize what's basically what factors play into a successful breeding. So, and then later on, when you get to day 11 to 14, you can do what is called palpation. So, palpation is what experienced rabbit breeders are going to do to tell if their rabbit is pregnant or not. Some really experienced breeders, I am not one of them, can even count embryos, and they can tell how many potential kits are going to be in that litter. And so, especially if you are a commercial breeder and it's really important that you have rabbits pretty consistently so you're not just feeding an open doe, this technique is really important because after 2 weeks, if you have an open rabbit, you can rebreed almost immediately. And so there's lots of videos and resources online. We have gotten to the point where we have about 90% accuracy when we're palpating, but really it's just practice, practice, practice. You just need to know your rabbits, know what they feel like before you breed, know what they feel like halfway through gestation and not day 11 to 14, and then know what they feel like really close to having their litter. So you can start developing that feel for them. All right, so on day 28, we are going to put in the nest box. Remember, gestation is anywhere from 28 to 32 on average days. So we're going to put the nest box in on day 28. I hit right at that day 28 because sometimes you'll have a doe that will have her litter a little early. But more importantly for me, having that litter box in, it just helps the doe be familiar and comfortable with that litter box, or not the litter box, the nest box, and it's going to encourage her to have that baby or build her nest and have her babies in the box, not on the wire. If you put the box in too early, the doe may end up using it as a litter box, and we have this happen all the time. I actually have a couple does that I have to put the box in on day 30 or they will have rabbits on the wire. For whatever reason, that's just how they are. And so knowing your stock and knowing what they are prone to do is also really important. I just pulled some pictures off of Google so you can see what these different nest box types are. We have wooden, you have metal. Some people just use like a cardboard box, which is not recommended, but can definitely be done. Basically, whatever you want to use, what you have available to you is going to be okay. We have a combination of wood and metal. In the summertime, I prefer a metal box with a removable bottom so that we get maximum airflow and those rabbits can stay cool. In the wintertime, we prefer a wooden box with a solid bottom so that we keep those babies as warm and secure as possible. Another thing we want to look for in our nest boxes is you can see this metal rabbit nest box, the second row down, just one over. It's got what we called a kit guard on it. So it's just a little piece of metal that goes straight across the front. When rabbits jump in and out of the nest box, sometimes a kit will be attached to a teat and they will get drug out. And then they'll either freeze or sometimes they'll fall through the wire. And so having that guard on there will really help. So take a look at the boxes you have available to you and decide what you want to use. Preparing to put the nest box in can be as simple as just putting the box in with your rabbit. In warm weather, that's what we do. We just put a box in bare. Sometimes I'll put a handful of hay in there to encourage the doe to jump in. But for the most part, we just stick the box in and we let the doe pull fur and do what she needs to do. In cold weather, we're a little bit more specific and technical about how we prepare our nest boxes. We start with a layer of absorbent bedding in the box. So we just get pine pellets, very similar to what you would put into a pellet burning stove. So we put that in the bottom. They're hyper absorbent, helps keep the kits dry and warm. And then we follow that by a little bit of straw and hay. And from there, we let the doe do what she needs to do to get those ready. And then on day 30, we check for kits. So gestation, like I said, approximately 30 days. You want to keep accurate records so you know if you have your does tend to go a little late or if they're early. We have a certain line of rabbits from our satins that they have rabbits on day 29 pretty consistently. That whole line does. The mother, the granddaughter, every replacement female we've had, day 29. And they grow fast, they're fine, but for whatever reason, they come a day early. And then our larger rabbits, our Tamuk does, they go as late as day 32, 33, 34 pretty consistently. So keeping those records and knowing exactly what to expect is going to be really important. Okay, so once the babies are born, from birth to weaning, this is something we get asked questions on a lot as well. Can we touch the baby rabbits? It is a common myth that touching baby rabbits will cause the mother to abandon or cannibalize them. Very rarely are you going to see a domestic rabbit eat the kits if they are alive. And if you have a doe, if you are experiencing this, if you have a doe that you think is cannibalizing her litter, check for rats, check for predators, and check for newborn kits that are alive. Does will often eat everything, the afterbirth and any dead kits. So if you are experiencing that a lot, it could be that she's having stillborns. But in my experience and the experience of commercial rabbit breeders, it is a myth. Like, you are not going to discourage a rabbit from taking care of her babies if you touch them and look at them. And in fact, it's very important that you count the kits and that you look for them. So on day 1, you have brand new baby kits. You're going to count them. Make sure you know exactly how many kits are in the box. We keep a record of the number born alive. So we want to know exactly how many were born alive, the number DOA or dead on arrival. So any stillborn kits or kits that have maybe been over cleaned or not alive at the time that we check. And then we also just keep track of potential colors and patterns. And that's mostly just because we're raising show rabbits as well. And so we just want to have an idea of what we have coming down the pipeline. So we're going to count the kits. Then from day 2 to 10, you're going to count those kits as often as you can. And the reason is because you need to remove any deceased kits pretty quickly. If it's warm outside, a dead kit is going to attract flies and you could potentially lose your entire litter from fly strike. So removing that dead kit that has started decomposing pretty quickly as soon as you find it is really important. If you leave them in there for even a day to 2 days, you're going to risk infection and maggots basically for the rest of your litter. If it's cold outside, a deceased kit is going to act like an ice cube and they can freeze your entire litter pretty quickly as well. So count your kits, remove any deceased kits, and keep track of that as well. So by the time we get to day 10, I know how many were born alive and we know how many were deceased by day 10. We keep track of all of that. And then when we're getting ready to wean and start counting kits, then we have those numbers too. So on the left, we have brand new baby kits. These kits are a day old. This is from our most recent litter that's in the nest box now. She had 9 kits and 1 was dead on arrival, so was stillborn in the box. And you can see this picture was taken just a couple days ago. So these kits are, I believe they were 8 to 9 days old at the time this picture was taken. You can see they've started to get a little bit of hair on them, but I still counted them. We had 8 live healthy kits. By the time you hit day 10, kits are going to start opening their eyes, and this is when we want to look for any sign of infection. You want to look for what we call nest box eye, or it's basically pink eye in rabbits. the kits are going to start hopping around. If it's cold outside, we like to tip the nest box on its side so that the kits hop out pretty frequently, but they can't always find their way back in. And if it's cold, they can freeze pretty quickly, especially if there's only one that has gotten out and he can't find his way back to the warmth of the nest. So we tip that nest box on its side. This is also a great time to clean the nest box out, make sure that you get any old bedding, anything that might be wet or damp that will either, the kits will either stay wet, which can affect their growth and their just overall health. But it also is a chance to look for any pieces of placenta that maybe you missed the first time, maybe other deceased kits that you missed, just to keep that whole litter healthy. By day 14 or 2 weeks, the kits are hopping around the cage. They're going to begin eating with their mom. Unlike some of our other livestock species where we provide a supplement or a creep feed specifically for the offspring, baby rabbits can eat exactly what the mom is eating. In fact, as long as the mom is on a high quality pellet and is getting plenty of nutrition from that, the babies can just eat that as well. So just make sure that they can reach that feed dish. By the time the kits are 4 to 6 weeks, they're typically ready to wean. Now, we don't want to sell our rabbits as young as 4 weeks. We want to wait until they're 8 or more, but your doe will start pushing the babies off, and you can see signs that they're ready to be weaned as early as 8 weeks, or 4 weeks, excuse me. Some signs that your litter is ready to be weaned: the doe's stressed, she's losing condition, she's acting really grumpy, she might even start chasing the kits. That's a time that either she needs more space or you need to remove the kits. If the kits are active, they're eating and they're drinking, they're ready to be weaned. We wean ours as early as 4 weeks, and there's no one size that fits all. Some of our does just do a really good job. The kits are ready to be weaned earlier. Sometimes we have some rabbits that need to stay with their mom closer to 6 weeks. So what we'll typically do is we'll go in and we'll select the rabbits that at 4 weeks are really thriving. We'll take them and move them to our grow out cages, and then we'll leave the smaller rabbits that need some more time with mom for another week or two. At 8+ weeks, kits are ready to be rehomed. This is going to avoid any stress and illness. Kits younger than 8 weeks are going to be really susceptible to digestive upset. So moving to a new location, being in a car, that can cause them to get GI stasis, which is almost always fatal. So once we've weaned our rabbits, the next step basically is rebreeding. How soon do you want to rebreed? Rabbits can be rebred the day after giving birth. In fact, there's some reports that you can even breed rabbits halfway through their gestation. So they'll have a litter and then 2 weeks later have another litter. I personally have never seen that happen, but there are some reports of that happening in commercial rabbitries. We like to give our does 4 to 6 weeks minimum to recuperate before we give them, before they have another litter. We find that we have a higher conception rate. So not only do we have a higher chance of them actually breeding and having a successful breed, but the litter size is bigger if we give them a little bit of time off. We have a lower mortality, meaning we have more kits born alive, and the doe is able to wean more kits. They have a more consistent milk production, and it just helps our does last longer. Some of our commercial rabbitries, the saying is you want one in the belly, one in the box, and one in the grow out pen, meaning you basically are breeding every 4 weeks, and you're very strict on that. We like to extend the longevity of our does just a little bit, and so we're spreading that out just a little bit. You just need to know what your goals are and what you need to do for your rabbits. If you're breeding throughout the year and you're trying to breed in the spring and the fall and have as many litters as you can, and then you're going to give your rabbits a break during the summer and the winter, might not be a bad thing to breed back to back like that. But bottom line is always check your doe's condition. If she's got good fleshing, her fur looks healthy, she's eating, she's receptive to the buck, she's likely ready to breed. And some does are just going to need some more time. Some does are ready to rebreed almost immediately. So, and that is basically, we hit right at 30 minutes. So that is basically breeding rabbits 101. So do we have any questions?
Thank you, Jessie. We do have one in the Q&A section. Steve asks, how difficult is it to maintain genetics and breed rabbits using parthenogenesis? Excuse me. Does it require a lab and or specialized equipment, or is it something a small scale breeder can undertake?
And rabbits do not put up with artificial insemination, or basically any type of artificial breeding very well. They are definitely working on it in the lab setting, but for a small scale breeder, it just doesn't, it's not worth it. Basically, there are so many rabbits, you can improve your genetics so quickly that it doesn't make sense to put in the time and the effort and the money. It, unlike some of our other livestock breeds where it makes sense to be bringing in genetics from, say, the East Coast, or maybe you're trying to maintain a specific color, you're trying to be really specific about what you have, or what ends up in your nest box. It just doesn't make sense to do that on a small scale. And even our commercial breeders, you can improve your genetics so quickly by just bringing in one buck, that it just doesn't make sense to put in that time and that effort. So, good question.
Thank you.